Thank you, Chair. So the government has said that all schools should take steps to prohibit the use of smartphones during the school day, but that it doesn't support an outright ban on smartphones in schools. So, as I told the Prime Minister, I recently hosted a roundtable with head teachers of secondary schools who spoke about the transformational effect that a complete ban had had on their schools and how much more effective it was than the turn it off and put it in your bag policy. But the issue for them is a vocal pushback from a minority of parents, and one said that he'd been spat and sworn at by parents for his choice, his decision to do this. Now, research from UE shows that 65% of teachers want more restrictions than the switch it off and put it in your bag policy. This is the biggest single change you could make to the quality of children's education with absolutely no cost. So why does the government continually refuse to introduce legislation which will cost nothing, massively reduce safeguarding harms in schools and improve children's educational outcomes and emotional well-being?
So mobile phones have no place in our schools, and school leaders already have the powers to ban them. I think, if I may, through what you've just said, you've identified that school leaders already have the power to take action in that way.
It's really difficult for a head teacher to do this, and one of my head teachers has just done it. The pushback, not from the kids, but the pushback from the parents is really hard because it becomes a personal decision by that head teacher, and they want to be able to say, I have to do it because that's what the law says, because that takes all the heat off them, and we shouldn't be putting head teachers in that position.
So no school leader, no teacher, no one in education should face what you've just described. It's completely unacceptable. But school leaders do have the powers to ban phones in schools. Your example demonstrates that they have the powers in order to do that. Now, what we've also seen sometimes this has been done on a local authority-wide basis. That can be an effective way of schools managing that. Of course, schools will sometimes wish to make small exemptions, for example, for reasons connected to disability, and I think it is right that schools are able to do that. But you know, the evidence that we have is that phones are already prohibited. Schools should enforce that. I think there is a question. I think where there is a genuine question is connected to wider behaviour and enforcement, and we want to work with schools to make that happen. But I would just slightly caution against sometimes some of the challenges that can also be presented in different contexts and wanting school leaders to implement the approach that's right for them. So, for example, some school leaders have taken the decision to use pouches. That is a route that's available to them, and I would, support schools in taking the choice that's right for them in their context. Equally, some will have introduced an outright ban. There are different ways of doing this, but I can be absolutely clear that phones should not be disrupting lessons. They have no place in our schools. But I do think that, what you've just set out about the approach that your school leaders are taking demonstrates they do have the powers to act. And, sadly, the abuse that they're facing or have faced from a small minority of parents is completely unacceptable. They have my full backing in doing what they believe to be the right thing for their school and for their community.
They don't have your backing in saying this is what you have to do, so therefore you're taking the responsibility off them and putting it on the DfE.
Well, the guidance is already clear that schools should prohibit the use of phones throughout the school day, including break times and lunch times, and we expect schools to take steps in line with that guidance, but there are different ways of schools implementing that.